At the heart of the story, young Tano confronts the fearsome Leopard Man, a creature cursed by ancient magic, with only a mysterious glowing orb to protect him. As the battle intensifies, Tano uncovers a hidden power within himself, but the true danger lies in the jungle's darkest secret, one that threatens not just his village, but the entire balance between the human world and the spirit realm. With every moment, the tension builds as Tano faces a choice that could change everything. The outcome is uncertain, and the stakes have never been higher. Will Tano's courage be enough to save those he loves? In a small village called Banza, deep in the heart of the jungle, lived a young boy named Tano. Tano was curious, brave, and loved to explore the dense forest that surrounded his village. Every day, he would venture into the trees, looking for hidden paths, strange animals, and secret places that no one else knew about. The villagers often warned Tano about the dangers of the jungle, but he was never afraid. He believed the jungle was his friend. One evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows over the village, Tano's grandfather, Kumo, called him close. Kumo was the oldest and wisest man in Banza, and everyone respected him. He had a long, gray beard and eyes that seemed to have seen everything. "Tano," Kumo began in a deep, serious voice, "I need to tell you a story that has been passed down through generations." Tano listened eagerly as his grandfather began to speak. "Long ago, before even my father was born, there was a man in this village, known as Zoba. Zoba was a skilled hunter, the best in all of Banza. He could track any animal, no matter how fast or clever it was. But Zoba was also proud and greedy. He wanted more power, more strength, more fame." Kumo paused, his eyes narrowing as if he could see the past right before him. One night, Zoba went into the jungle alone. He met a strange, old woman who lived deep in the forest. She was not like any other person. Her eyes glowed in the dark, and her voice was like the wind whispering through the trees. She offered Zoba a deal. She would give him the strength of a leopard, the speed of the wind, and the cunning of a snake. But in return, he had to promise something terrible. Tano's heart pounded as he leaned in closer. "What did he promise, grandfather?" he asked. Kumo looked into Tano's eyes, his voice growing even softer. "He promised that every full moon, he would become the Leopard Man. His heart would turn wild, and he would have to hunt his own people, his own village." Tano gasped. "Did he agree?" Kumo nodded slowly. "Yes," he agreed. Zoba became the Leopard Man, and for many years, he terrorized the village. No one knew who or what was killing their friends and family, only that the beast would come every full moon, leaving behind nothing but fear and sorrow. The room was silent except for the crackling of the fire. Tano couldn't believe what he had heard. "But what happened to Zoba? How did it end?" he asked. Kumo sighed deeply. One day, a brave warrior named Dala, who had lost his brother to the Leopard Man, decided to end the curse. He set a trap deep in the jungle, using himself as bait. When the full moon rose and Zoba transformed into the Leopard Man, Dala fought him with all his strength. It was a fierce battle, but in the end, Dala managed to wound the beast. As Zoba lay dying, he turned back into a man, his eyes filled with regret. With his last breath, he whispered a warning. "The curse is not gone. It will return one day." Tano shivered. "Do you think the curse will come back, grandfather?" Kumo looked out at the darkening sky, his face full of worry. "I hope not, Tano. But the jungle is full of secrets, and sometimes those secrets find their way back to us." That night, Tano couldn't sleep. His mind was filled with thoughts of the Leopard Man and the curse that still lingered in the shadows of the jungle. He wondered if he would be brave enough to face such a danger if it ever came back. As days passed, Tano tried to push the story out of his mind, but it was no use. Every time he ventured into the jungle, he felt as if the trees were whispering to him, warning him to turn back. But Tano was curious, and his curiosity led him deeper and deeper into the forest. One afternoon, as he was exploring a part of the jungle he had never seen before, Tano stumbled upon an old, overgrown path. The plants and vines seemed to reach out to him, urging him to follow. Tano hesitated for a moment, remembering his grandfather's story, but then his curiosity got the better of him. He pushed through the underbrush and followed the path. The deeper he went, the darker it became. The trees grew taller, their branches twisting together like a giant web. The air was thick and heavy, making it hard to breathe. But Tano kept going, driven by a strange feeling in his chest, a feeling that something important was waiting for him at the end of the path. Finally, after what felt like hours, Tano emerged into a small clearing. In the center of the clearing was an ancient stone hut, covered in moss and vines. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Tano's heart raced as he stepped closer. He could feel the air around him change, becoming colder, more menacing. As he reached the door of the hut, Tano heard a soft voice behind him. "You shouldn't be here, little one." Tano spun around, his heart pounding. Standing at the edge of the clearing was an old woman, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. She looked exactly like the woman his grandfather had described in the story. "Are you the one who cursed Zoba?" Tano asked, his voice trembling. The old woman smiled, but it was a sad, tired smile. "I gave him what he wanted, but the curse was his own doing. Power always comes with a price." Tano swallowed hard. "Is the curse still here?" The woman nodded slowly. "Yes, it is. And it has been waiting for someone like you." Tano took a step back, fear creeping up his spine. "What do you mean?" The old woman looked at him with pity. "You have the heart of a warrior, just like Dala. But you also have the curiosity of Zoba. The curse has sensed this, and it is calling to you." Tano shook his head, refusing to believe it. "No, I would never agree to such a thing." The woman sighed. "The curse doesn't need your agreement, Tano. It only needs your fear. The more you fear it, the stronger it becomes. You must be brave, brave enough to resist its call." Tano felt his heart racing, but he knew he had to be strong. "How do I fight it?" The woman pointed to the stone hut. "Inside, you'll find the answer. But be warned, the path you choose will not be easy." Tano hesitated, but he knew he had no choice. He had to face the curse, not just for himself, but for the entire village. Taking a deep breath, he pushed open the door of the hut and stepped inside. The darkness inside was thick, almost suffocating. Tano could barely see anything as he moved forward, his hands stretched out in front of him. He could feel the cold stone walls on either side, rough and damp. The air was heavy with the smell of earth and decay. Suddenly, Tano's foot hit something solid. He stumbled, catching himself before he fell. Looking down, he saw a large, flat stone with strange markings carved into it. In the center of the stone was a small, glowing orb, pulsing with a soft, eerie light. Tano reached out to touch the orb, but as soon as his fingers brushed against it, a jolt of energy shot through him. He gasped, pulling his hand back. The orb began to glow brighter, filling the entire hut with light. Tano watched in amazement as the light formed into a swirling vortex, right in front of him. Inside the vortex, he could see images flashing by, images of Zoba, Dala, and the terrible battles they had fought. He saw the jungle, dark and full of shadows, and he saw the village of Banza, peaceful but vulnerable. And then he saw something else, something that made his blood run cold. He saw himself, standing in the jungle, but he wasn't alone. Next to him was a figure, half man, half beast, with the eyes of a leopard and the strength of 100 men. Tano shook his head, trying to clear the vision. "No, this can't be real," he whispered to himself. But the vortex swirled faster, pulling him in. Tano felt himself being drawn toward it, unable to resist. The images became clearer, sharper, until they were no longer just visions. They were real, happening right in front of him. Tano found himself standing in the middle of the jungle, but this time, it was different. The trees were taller, their branches reaching out like claws. The air was thick with the smell of blood, and the ground beneath his feet was wet and sticky. He looked around, trying to find a way out, but there was none. The jungle had closed in around him, trapping him in its dark embrace. And then he heard it, a low growl, coming from the shadows. Tano's heart pounded in his chest as he turned toward the sound. Out of the darkness stepped the Leopard Man, his eyes glowing with a wild, savage light. He was taller than Tano had imagined, his muscles rippling beneath his fur-covered skin. His claws were sharp, his teeth even sharper. Tano knew he had to run, but his feet wouldn't move. He was frozen in place, paralyzed by fear. The Leopard Man took a step closer, his growl growing louder, more menacing. "Run!" a voice screamed in Tano's head. But he couldn't. He was trapped just like Zoba had been, just like all the others. The Leopard Man lunged, and Tano felt a surge of adrenaline. At the last moment, he managed to dive out of the way, narrowly avoiding the beast's claws. He scrambled to his feet and ran, his heart pounding in his chest. But the Leopard Man was fast, faster than any animal Tano had ever seen. He could hear the beast behind him, getting closer and closer with each step. Tano pushed through the thick underbrush, his lungs burning, his legs aching. He knew he couldn't outrun the Leopard Man forever. He had to find a way to fight back. As he ran, Tano spotted something up ahead, a large tree with low-hanging branches. He remembered his grandfather's stories about how the villagers used to climb trees to escape predators. Without thinking, Tano grabbed the lowest branch and pulled himself up. The Leopard Man reached the base of the tree, just as Tano climbed out of reach. The beast snarled in frustration, pacing back and forth at the base of the tree. Tano watched from above, trying to catch his breath. But he knew he couldn't stay in the tree forever. The Leopard Man would find a way to get to him eventually. He needed a plan. Tano looked around, searching for anything he could use to defend himself. Then he spotted something, a long, sturdy branch lying on the ground a few feet away. If he could reach it, he might be able to use it as a weapon. Tano took a deep breath, summoning all his courage. He waited until the Leopard Man was distracted, then quickly climbed down the tree. He grabbed the branch and swung it at the beast with all his might. The branch connected with the Leopard Man's side, and the beast roared in pain. But it didn't slow down. If anything, it only made him angrier. Tano knew he was running out of options. He needed to find a way to stop the Leopard Man for good. Then he remembered the glowing orb in the hut. It had shown him visions of the past, of Zoba and Dala. Maybe it held the key to defeating the curse. Tano made a split-second decision. He turned and ran back toward the hut, the Leopard Man hot on his heels. He could feel the beast's breath on the back of his neck, but he didn't dare look back. When he reached the clearing, Tano sprinted to the hut and threw open the door. He could see the orb still glowing in the center of the room. Without hesitation, he reached out and grabbed it. As soon as his fingers touched the orb, a surge of energy shot through him. The room filled with light, and Tano felt a strange, powerful force enter his body. The Leopard Man burst through the door, his eyes blazing with fury. But Tano wasn't afraid anymore. He could feel the power of the orb coursing through his veins, filling him with strength and courage. He turned to face the Leopard Man, holding the orb high. The Leopard Man lunged, but Tano stood his ground. He could feel the energy of the orb building, growing stronger with each passing second. Just as the beast was about to reach him, Tano released the energy in a blinding flash of light. The Leopard Man howled in pain as the light engulfed him. His body convulsed, his claws retracting, his fur falling away. In an instant, the beast was gone, leaving behind only a man with a haunted look in his eyes. Tano watched in awe as the man collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. The orb's light faded, and the room returned to darkness. Tano dropped to his knees, exhausted but victorious. The man on the floor looked up at Tano, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. "You have freed me from the curse." Tano nodded, too tired to speak. He knew that this was not the end, that there were still many questions left unanswered. But for now, he had won. He had faced the curse and emerged victorious. As the man slowly got to his feet, Tano realized that he recognized him. It was Zoba, the hunter from his grandfather's story. The curse had finally been lifted, and Zoba was free. But as Tano helped him to his feet, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. The jungle was quiet, too quiet. The trees seemed to be watching them, waiting for something. Tano looked at Zoba, his heart filled with unease. "Is it really over?" he asked. Zoba shook his head, his eyes filled with sadness. "The curse is gone, but the jungle is still full of secrets. There are still many dangers, many challenges ahead." Tano nodded, knowing that this was only the beginning of his journey. The jungle was a mysterious place, full of ancient powers and hidden dangers. But he was ready. He had faced the Leopard Man and won, and he knew that he could face whatever came next. As they left the hut and began the long journey back to the village, Tano couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The jungle was quiet, too quiet. The trees seemed to be watching them, their branches whispering secrets that Tano couldn't quite hear. But he knew one thing for sure: the adventure was far from over. The jungle held many more mysteries, and Tano was determined to uncover them all. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for another masterpiece, and don't forget to hit that notification bell to get notified whenever we upload a video.